Before Ashley gets started on her teaching, we are going to see a sweet video on gratitude.
Strawberry milk.
Yeah. Thank you, Mama. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mama.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mama.
Okay, outside.
Whoa. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. You got it? You got it? You got it? No, you don't got it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mama.
You're welcome. Go share with Auntie.
Thank you, Mama. Thank you, Mama.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mama.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mama. Thank you, Mama.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mama. Thank you, Mama.
You're welcome. Put it down.
Thank you, Mama.
You're welcome. Go eat with Daddy. Bye.
Welcome. Okay, what is she feeding that baby? And he actually eats that? That's such a good kid. Welcome, Ashley.
All right. Well, watching that video, I'm sure you can agree that kid was adorable. You just want to take him home and pinch his cheeks all day. And his little voice and his little head bobble, like what was that? That was the cutest thing. But I think we can agree that the most endearing part of that child was his genuine gratitude he had toward his mom. I mean, she was giving him this food, and it wasn't rehearsed. I mean, you could tell he was truly, truly thankful for the food that he was receiving. And really, who wouldn't? Like she said, getting charcuterie trays at the age of 3, right? He has quite the palate. Well, I know that we desire this from our children. We want them to have grateful hearts, and we too should want to grow in gratitude. And because it's the right thing to do. It's the polite thing to do, right? But not only that, it's been proven that it's the good thing for us to do. Studies after studies show that having a grateful attitude, habitually being a grateful person, actually has some effects on your life that maybe we didn't think of. Like studies show that having a life of gratitude, it improves your relationships. It can improve your physical health. Your blood pressure, things like that. It can improve your mental health, things like anxiety and depression. It can improve your sleep. It can help you be more empathetic and have feelings towards others. And the list goes on and on and on. And many studies have shown these exact same things. So really, what is the downside to gratitude, right? Sign me up. Well, if we know that having a grateful heart is the good thing to do, and it's the right thing to do, it's the polite thing to do, then we need to take a close look at gratitude and what it is and what it isn't, and why we should have it, and what should motivate us to have it. So if you have kids, toddler and above, I'm sure you've been in this situation. So you've worked with your kids on saying thank you when someone gives them something or gives them a compliment, and you're in public and someone comes up and does just that. They give your child a compliment. And so you wait, and you wait, and now it's still silent and it's getting awkward. So you bend down and say, "What do you say?" And they say thank you, right? We've all probably been in that situation. If you haven't, you will soon, right? It's because gratitude does not come naturally. We do not come out of the womb screaming thank yous, thanking our mothers for birthing us, thanking our fathers for helping and conceiving us. We are not grateful people naturally. Because most things that are best for us, most things that are good for us, they don't come naturally. We have to work at them. We have to be intentional about them. We have to even maybe have a plan to grow in those areas. So after the holidays every year, I like to do a cleanse, a diet cleanse, because in the holidays, you're eating all the good things. You're eating all the pies. You're eating all the very fattening and indulgent foods. And so I do this cleanse every January. And I love it because it kind of resets my body. It resets my body to kind of crave the good food that my body truly needs, that it's going to run most efficiently on. And after I get past that first week of like sugar withdrawals and the misery of that, I do feel great. I mean, my mind is clear. I'm sleeping better. I'm just firing on all cylinders when I'm putting the right things in my body. But the first thing I have to do before I start this cleanse is I have to go into my pantry, I have to go into my refrigerator, and I got to get out all the things that I shouldn't be eating. The processed foods, the sugar, the chips, things that are going to inhibit my goals for this cleanse. And so I think when we think of gratitude, We can't unpack it first without looking at its antithesis, which is ingratitude, which is when we lack giving thanks. And it's the chips and the sweets, so to speak, of our character that we just need to get rid of first if we are going to have a life that is characterized by gratitude. We got to take a look at where it rears its ugly head and point it out and see it for what it is. So point number 1 is recognize your ingratitude. Recognize your ingratitude. Well, like I was saying before, gratitude does not come naturally. You know what does come more naturally? Ingratitude. We are more naturally ungrateful. And you might hear that word ungrateful, and you think of maybe the spoiled 16-year-old teenager you might have seen on TV that received the BMW for her 16th birthday, but she wanted a Mercedes, and so like throws the massive fit, right? That is ingratitude, for sure. But ingratitude doesn't always manifest itself in such an extreme, like hyperbolic way. Ingratitude is simply the absence of gratitude. The Bible has a lot to say about gratitude. I mean, we could go on all day what the Bible has to say about ingratitude and gratitude. But a passage I'm going to take you to today is found in the book of Luke, the Gospel of Luke, Luke 17. And this is a story about Jesus as he's walking along a path to Jerusalem. And he's passing through various cities and villages, and he comes across this group of lepers. Now, that title, lepers, is for people that have the disease of leprosy. And if you don't know what leprosy is, it's a horrible disease. It's all over your skin. You have these white, horrible patches. Oftentimes their face would be distorted and have like a cat-like, like lion-like appearance. So if you had leprosy, everyone knew. There was no way of hiding it. And on top of that, it was really, really contagious. And so for that reason, if you had leprosy, oftentimes they shunned you from the city. They shunned you from everyone else, and you could not be around other people. It was the law. And in order to re-enter society, once you were over the leprosy, you had to be declared clean by a priest in order to re-enter society. So it was something horrible. So in Luke 17, verses 11 through 17, we see Jesus come across these lepers, and it says this: On the way to Jerusalem, he was passing along between Samaria and Galilee. And as he entered a village, he was met by 10 lepers who stood at a distance and lifted up their voices, saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. When he saw them, he said to them, Go and show yourselves to the priests. And as they went, they were cleansed. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. And he fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Now he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus answered, Were not 10 cleansed? Where are the 9? So 10 lepers were met by Jesus, and they didn't ask to be healed, yet Jesus does heal them. Not in that instance, though. He says to go to the priest. So we don't know if it was 10 feet down the road or 10 miles down the road, but at some point they looked down and they were cleansed. And yet only one of them returns to give thanks. And he doesn't just come back and say, Hey, Jesus, thanks. Woo, I look great. Thanks, man. No, he says he fell on his face at Jesus' feet and gave thanks. I mean, this is a real picture of gratitude. But then Jesus states the obvious. He says, We're not 10 cleansed. Where are the other 9? So we can see that gratitude is important to Jesus. We may look at a passage like this and say, well, I know I would be the one. I would be the one that returns. That would totally be me. And it's easy to say that. To be honest, ladies, though, most of us would fall in the group of 9. Because ingratitude comes more naturally than gratitude. And it can manifest in our lives in just many different ways that are kind of sneaky. And so we're going to take a look at some areas that we can recognize ingratitude in ourselves. And I'm going to call these the gateways to ingratitude. And on your note sheets, you have letters A through E. So we're going to look at a few things. Letter A, unrealistic expectations. When we have unrealistic expectations, it means that we have set these pie-in-the-sky expectations of possibly people in our lives, situations in our lives, an event coming up, whatever it may be. So you can imagine if those expectations are not met, the next thing that comes is disappointment. And then the next thing that follows that is ingratitude, right? We cannot be grateful when we are disappointed because we didn't get what we wanted. So it's important that we keep those expectations realistic, especially of people in our lives, especially of people like our husbands. People are flawed. They are going to let us down. So it's important to keep realistic expectations of others. Letter B is entitlement. That takes unrealistic expectations and it raises it a bar. Because now not only do you have pie in the sky expectations, you now feel that you're owed, that you deserve whatever the scenario is, whatever the scenario is, whatever the person is going to do for you, you're owed this. And so, as you can imagine, if things don't go your way, your attitude is going to be anything but that of gratitude. It could be anger and any way that ingratitude can manifest itself, but it's not going to be gratitude. Letter C is comparison. And this is one that I think as women, we really need to concentrate on, because I think this is one that traps women most often. And it will even trap your kids at times, and especially if you have teenagers. And this is when we look at others' lives and compare them with our own. We may be looking at their husbands. We may be looking at their children. We may be looking at their homes or their cars or the vacations they go on or their clothes or their bodies. List goes on and on. We're comparing our lives to others. And if we're doing that, sometimes our life looks, less shiny, right? I mean, for instance, if you have a neighbor across the cul-de-sac and her husband is really successful and they go on all kinds of great vacations, they go to Europe and Asia, and, her home is constantly being remodeled to like Joanna Gaines standards, right? I mean, it's just, she's got it all. You could look at your own home and your own life and it may not luster as much. And you may go, right? But have you forgotten? Have you forgotten that you live in the same neighborhood as this woman, right? Your husband does work. He does provide. You live in a home. You have food on the table. And, you didn't go to France last summer, but you did take your family to Yosemite and went camping and made awesome family memories. So comparison, they say, is the thief of joy. But I also think it's a thief of joy and gratitude. So don't let comparison be the thief of your gratitude. Letter D is focusing on the negative. They call people that do this habitually negative Nancy's. Have you ever heard that term? Don't be a negative Nancy. This is someone that just is constantly focusing on the bad things that are going on. And truly, this is a default in our culture if you really look at it. I mean, if you watch the evening news, is there really anything positive? It is all negative. In advertising, they say sex sells, but in the news industry, it's negativity sells, bottom line. I mean, so much so that if there is a positive story, they make a big deal of it, right? Have you ever watched when there is like a Good Samaritan story or something? They're like, we have some good news tonight. And they're just so excited to share it because it rarely happens. It seems to be the default. But if we're focusing on the negatives, we're going to be blinded to anything positive that we could give gratitude towards. Imagine you're at Disneyland. And, at Disneyland, they have all the different lands, right? They've got Tomorrowland, and they've got Star Wars Land. And let's just say they open up a new land, and it's called Negative Land. And you walk by Negative Land, and it's like gray and drab. The only characters you can visit in there are like the blue girl from Inside Out, right? Remember her? And you walk by and you're like, who would go in there? Who would spend any time in there? I mean, we're at Disneyland. Why? Why would you even go in there? We'd probably say that, right? But yet so many of us are guilty of spending far too much time in negative land without even realizing it. Are you surrounding yourself with negative people that are bringing you down? Maybe you need to cut out the news. Maybe you need to cut out that podcast or the TV show that's just constantly feeding you the negativity that is making you then concentrate on it. Make those changes in your life. Letter E, last one, is forgetfulness. And when I say forgetfulness, I don't mean, I forgot where my keys were. Forgetfulness in that we've forgotten the blessings that we do have in life, the many ways that we are blessed in life. And really, this one kind of tags along with all the other ones we've been talking about. Because if we feel entitled, we're going to forget the blessings that we have. If we have unrealistic expectations, we're going to forget the blessings that we have. If we're comparing ourselves, we're going to forget the blessings that we have. And so forgetfulness is something that tags along with everything. And an example of this is when I took my 2 younger children to Disneyland this year. We got them 3-day passes for their birthday. And my youngest had been when he was a baby, but this was really his first time, so he didn't remember the first time. So we went all out. I mean, we got there at Rope Drop. We did all the things. We ate all the things. He got the churro. He got the cotton candy. We got the Disney toffee. And it was a day. And we had a great time. And towards the end of the day, we passed another place that was selling soft serve ice cream. And he said, "Mom, can I get soft serve ice cream?" And the sugar tally's like going in my head of the day, and I decided at that moment, like, our intake had been sufficient, and I said, no, we're not gonna get soft serve today. And he said, you always say no. I said yes to like 99 things, but the one thing I said no to, it wiped out the 99. It wiped out the entire great day we had had, and that can be true of us as well. Those are just a few ways that can like lead you down the path to ungratefulness. So as you can see, it's important that we recognize those ways, recognize the way we can identify with those things, so we don't end up in that group of 9 lepers. We don't want to be one of the 9. We want to be the one of the one, right? Well, going back to my cleanse, when I do that cleanse every year and I've gotten rid of all the bad stuff, I got to bring in the good stuff. I got to fill my fridge with all the colorful things, right? They always say eat the rainbow. So you got like all your fruits and vegetables and all the colorful things, all the lean meats, all the whole grains and all that stuff that's going to help me be successful, that I've made room for because I've gotten rid of the bad stuff. So once we recognize the ways that will inhibit our pursuit of growing in gratitude, we can turn from them and then forge a new path so that their life is more characterized by gratitude, and we can have an attitude of gratitude. We can do that by expressing gratitude regularly. So that's point number 2, express gratitude regularly. Express gratitude regularly. Well, like we've been saying all morning, things that are good, that are right, that don't come naturally, it's sometimes saying something like this, we'll express gratitude regularly, like easier said than done, right? I can say it, but if I go and try and do it right now, it is so much harder. I have to make an effort. I have to be intentional. I have to maybe even make a plan to express gratitude more regularly. And again, the Bible has so much to say on this. And this verse, I'm sure you have seen it this time of year. It's pretty much plastered everywhere, especially if you walk through Hobby Lobby right now. It's 1 Thessalonians 5:18. 1 Thessalonians 5:18 says, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you." It doesn't say give thanks in some circumstances. It doesn't say give thanks in the good circumstances or the happy circumstances. It says give thanks in all circumstances. But I think we can agree that all circumstances aren't rainbows and butterflies and roses, right? There are a lot of not so good circumstances. There are sad circumstances and tragic and maddening and angering circumstances. I mean, how do we give thanks when there's a health issue or a death in the family or marital strife or unruly children? I mean, is it possible to give thanks in those times as well? It is. It is possible, and we should do it. And if you're a Christian in the room, you're commanded to. That give thanks, that's an imperative. That is a command. You will give thanks in all circumstances. Because really, what characterizes a grateful person is not someone that can just give thanks in the good times. I mean, anybody can do that. Anyone can give thanks when things are going well and things are going their way. But what sets a truly grateful person apart is when she can give thanks in even the toughest of times, even the most tragic of times. And if we want to grow in this area and we want our children to grow in this area, it's practicing giving thanks in these times that's going to facilitate the most growth. Because there's always something to be thankful for. Even in the bleakest of times, there is always something to be thankful for. For instance, if you have a health issue, okay, or a family member, we can be thankful for the doctors that we have nowadays. Our doctors nowadays know so much more about the human body than they did 200 years ago. We have technology that can scan our bodies and find things that were never detectable before. And we have medicines that do phenomenal things. We live in a time where we can be so grateful for even just the access to those things. What about your kids giving you a run for your money one day? Have you had a bad day with your kids? They're just being unruly and disobedient and defiant. I have to say, 2 days ago, so I taught yesterday, but Wednesday, I had one of these days. It was a day in our home, okay, with one of our children. And it really made me apply what we're talking about today. I had to stop, and I had to give thanks in this just really trying moment with my children. And I gave thanks that I even have children that I have to discipline. And I gave thanks for the privilege of being a mother. There's a lot of people out there that want to be mothers that aren't yet, or maybe never will be. And as hard as it can be sometimes, we can always be thankful in even the toughest of times. Well, then there's these things called common mercies. If we find ourselves in a situation where we're just like, I can't find anything to be thankful for, we can always look to what's called the common mercies. And common mercies are things that are common to most, if not all, people. And so what are these things? Well, Charles Spurgeon, he's a famous theologian, he says this about common mercies. Common, as we frequently call them, and yet so priceless that when deprived of them, we are ready to perish. So these are the things in our lives that we probably take for granted. Things like waking up in the morning. We all had that happen this morning, right? We are all here this morning. Just the gift of waking up in the morning, the sun rising. We live in a modern age. What about like running water? Okay. I can say a few weeks ago, my husband was working on something in the house with plumbing, and he said, I'm going to turn the water main off. And he told me this so that I wouldn't use water, and then it like flew out of my mind, and all of a sudden I decided to do all the things that required water. Like 12 things. And I kept being reminded that the water was off, and I thought, wow, like how much we are dependent on running water. And I only didn't have it for an hour, right? We can be thankful for just our senses, being able to see and hear and touch and feel the things of this world. Beauty, such as art and music and just creation as you look outside, a snow-capped mountain, the ocean, the beach. Our modern comforts that we have. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Because if they weren't here, we would definitely notice, right? I mean, if the sun did not rise tomorrow, everyone would notice. In fact, it would probably be on the news, right? Well, if our children are having a hard time being thankful, then we need to remind them of these things. If we're having a hard time being thankful, we need to be reminded of these things. But there are some practical things that we can do to help just facilitate and be grateful more regularly. One you can do is to keep a gratitude journal. And if you've done this in the past or haven't done this yet, it's just keeping a journal where every single day, at the end of the day, you write down just a handful of things that you were thankful for. If you do decide to do this or you're doing this, I urge you to be specific. Don't write down, I'm thankful for my home and my family and, food, all good things to be thankful for, but be specific to that day. What about your home are you thankful for that day? What about your husband are you thankful for that day? What about your children are you thankful for that day? Because when you go back and read this, that's where it's going to come alive and the gratitude is going to abound more in your life. The second thing you can do, and this involves the entire family, is a gratitude jar or a gratitude bucket, or it could be a gratitude Amazon box. It doesn't matter. It's a container that everybody can write down things they're grateful for a period of time and stick it in that container. Some people I've seen do rocks with like a Sharpie, and so they write what they're thankful for, their name, and the date. And you could do it for an entire year. You could do it for the holiday season. You could do it for a summer. But whatever that period of time is, at the end, you go and take out all of the entries that your family put in and you read them aloud together. And it's kind of fun because you get to see what your children wrote down, you get to see what your husband wrote down, and just all the different things and the way everyone perceived maybe even an event you went to or a vacation you went on and what they were grateful for versus what the other person was grateful for. So it's a really great exercise to do with the entire family. Number 3, I call 3 things you're thankful for. I don't really have a more catchy name than that. And this is more of a tactic you can use. This is a tactic when you or your children are entering one of those gateways to ingratitude, right? You're seeing entitlement rear its ugly head. You're seeing comparison rear its ugly head. And this is where you stop. You stop yourself, you stop your child and say, what can I be grateful for right now? What are 3 things that I am really grateful for right now? And you'd be amazed at how quickly your mind shifts and redirects from whatever it was that you were focusing on. And in fact, I did this with my son that day at Disneyland. He didn't get the soft serve, and I always say no, right? And I looked down at him and I said, have we had a good day today? And he said, yeah. I said, what's been your favorite part? He said, Thunder Mountain, which I had to force him to go on, but boy, did he love Thunder Mountain. I said, are you thankful for Thunder Mountain? Yes. And then I made him name a couple more things that he was thankful for from that day. And you know what? He didn't mention the soft serve again. It just, flew out of his mind all of a sudden, right? Because he remembered how blessed he was. Number 4, or the 4th thing we can do is thank you notes. I know you're probably going, well, yeah, duh, thank you notes, And yeah, we should be sending thank you notes. I know texting and emails are great, but the thank you note should not be extinct. We should not let that go extinct. But then there's these thank you notes that I call like the on season. That's like birthdays and Christmas and after your wedding or something like that. You're going to send thank you notes, right? But what about the off season, what I call? So just the just because thank you notes. Like these are the thank you notes that maybe your son will send his teacher. Thank you for teaching me long division. You know, it was really hard and you really taught me how to do long division. Or what about our Kids Bible Club volunteers? I know that they would love to get either a picture or a thank you note from you or your children. You know, thank you for teaching me about Jesus. Thank you for the goldfish. You know, whatever it is that your child is thankful for. These are kind of the off-season times that we can just send a just because thank you card. Maybe it's to a friend who just sat with you and listened to you as you just told her about some problems you're having. So, lastly, is surround yourself with grateful people. And this should really be a no-brainer. Like we said before, if you've got the negative Nancys in your life, we need to distance ourselves. And then you want to surround yourself with people that are going to spur you on to be grateful. And I know as adults, we probably want to think that we're so above the influence of others, like that was our teen years, and we don't jump on every fad or adopt mannerisms or anything from our friends, but that's totally not true. It's not true because whoever you surround yourself with, you will be like. And if you're surrounding yourself with grateful people, that's attractive. I mean, that should be attractive, and you should want to grow that way yourself. So you're going to start doing some of the things they're doing. You're going to start saying some of the things that they say. It will never come back void. Well, expressing gratitude regularly is a goal I think that we should see as worth pursuing. It's not going to come back void. But if we're giving thanks in all circumstances, it begs the question, who or what are we thanking? Where are all those thank yous going? I mean, we don't just throw a thank you into the universe. There's no power there. There's no effect that could have. And to give thanks, there has to be a recipient. There has to be a destination. It has to go to the source for what we're thankful for. And the Bible gives us the exact source of where all good things come from. In James 1, verse 17, it says, "Every good and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is not variation or shadow due to change." The Bible's telling us that everything comes from God, everything. So that's where our thanks should be directed. So that's point number 3, direct your thanks to God. Direct your thanks to God. Well, whether you want to admit it or not, everything does come from God. Everything we have. He's the source of all good things because he is a good, a holy, and he's a loving God. And while people in our lives, they may deserve thanks, you know, the lady that brings you your iced tea at the restaurant and things like that, ultimately, our gratitude should go to God. And there's a great children's book that kind of illustrates this. I have it here on the stage, and it is available in our bookstore. It's called Eric Says Thanks, or Eric Gives Thanks. And it's about a boy whose mother gives him his breakfast, and it's a piece of toast. And he just really loves this toast. And so he just is overwhelmed with gratitude towards his mother for the toast, kind of like the boy we saw in the video. And she says, "Oh, well, you're welcome, but you should really be thanking the baker. He baked the bread." And so Eric goes on this journey to thank all the people in the supply chain of the toast he ate for breakfast. So he goes to the baker, who sends him to the delivery guy, who sends him to the flour mill girl, who sends him to the farmer. So he ends up on the farm with the farmer, and the farmer, accepts his gratitude, but he says, without the sunshine every morning, and without the rain that's forming in the clouds right now, I couldn't have done any of this. I mean, it's all God. God supplied it all. And so Eric learns that the gratitude ultimately is to God. And that's true with everybody in our lives. As much as we should say thank you to the people in our lives, God has supplied those people. He has supplied their talents. He has supplied the knowledge that they have or any wisdom that they had that you have benefited from. So the thanks needs to go to God. And while every good and perfect gift does come from God, there's one gift. There's one gift that surpasses them all. There's one gift that he has given to us that is better than any gift he's ever given and any gift he ever will give. And that's Jesus. That's Jesus. Jesus he gave to us to pay the penalty for our sins on the cross. Jesus was given to be what's called our substitute. But what does that mean? To be someone's substitute. I know you probably think of like a substitute teacher, right? You were in high school and your teacher was gone, so a substitute teacher would come in and be the stand-in for the day and do the job of the teacher, but then the teacher would come back and resume their job. But Jesus did more than stand in for a day. and do a job that we would have to return back to. In fact, we don't have to return back to the job because Jesus said, "It is finished." He came down from heaven and he paid the penalty for our sins so that we wouldn't have to. You know, because God created us, he created us to have a relationship with him. He created animals and plants and all the things, but they don't have a relationship with him. Human beings, he created to have a relationship with him. But to have a relationship with God, we have to be perfect. We have to be holy because he can't be around anything other than holiness. And we are not that, right? We are all sinners. We have all fallen short of God's standard. We've all lived our way instead of God's way. And because of that, that relationship that he desires with us is broken. It's broken and there's nothing that we can do to fix it. But that's why he sent Jesus. He sent Jesus down, and Jesus lived here on this earth for approximately 33 years, fully God, fully human, and he lived the perfect life. And Jesus was born a baby. He went through the toddler years, he went through the kid years, he went through the teenage years, but he never talked back to his parents, he never disobeyed, he never snuck out at night. Jesus lived a perfect life that we cannot live. And he did that for us. And then he went to the cross and paid the penalty for the imperfect lives that we are living. He paid the penalty for our sins so that we could be right with God. Because when Jesus died on that cross and rose again, we then get his righteousness. We get his perfection. And when we get that perfection, that relationship with God is completely restored. It's called reconciled. We can now be right with God. We can now not only be right with God in this life, but in the afterlife, in the next life, in heaven. We will spend heaven in eternity with God. And 2 Corinthians 5:21 says, "For our sake he made him sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." That's that picture of that substitution. He became sin who knew no sin so that we could become the righteousness. 1 Peter 2, verses 34 through 35 says, he himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, meaning the cross, that we might die to sin and live to righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed. For you were straying like sheep, but have returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. And that's that picture of just being reconciled to God, having that relationship repaired. And if you're a Christian here today, and you've trusted in what Jesus did on the cross, I mean, this should be your source of gratitude. This should be where all gratitude comes from. Because to wake up every morning and know that your relationship with God is intact and that your place in eternity in heaven is secure, I mean, there's nothing more we can be grateful for. That should be the source of all of our gratitude. And that child in the video earlier, you know, he gives thanks for the food he receives, and rightfully so, but that food is temporal. It's going to be eaten and it's going to be gone. But what we get through the gift of Jesus, it's eternal. It's going to last forever. It's something we should always be thankful for. In this book, Choosing Gratitude, and I have that one also on the stage here, it says this of Christians: is the gratitude that flows out of your life as abounding as the grace that has flowed into your life? Is the gratitude that flows out as big as the grace that flows in? Ask yourself that. That is a really good question to ask. And there may be some of you here today wondering, I don't know if my source of gratitude is this. I don't know if this is where my source of gratitude is. I don't know where my relationship with God truly stands. And that's a great question to ask too, and it's okay to ask it. And that's why your leaders and mentors are here. They're here to help you answer that question because it's the most important question that you can answer in your lifetime. You know, gratitude, it's a good thing I think we've seen. It's something that we should desire. It's good to rid our lives of ingratitude. It's good to be thankful. It's better even to be thankful regularly. But it's best when thanks is given to that rightful source of all the things that we receive. And he is the source of our gratitude. So as you head into this Thanksgiving holiday this next week, I just pray that the focus on having a grateful heart won't end on November 30th and then recycle back November 1st next year. My prayer, my hope for you all is that it will grow in the days and the weeks and the years to come. Thank you. Have a great discussion.